Welcome back to day 6. We are at the halfway point of our summer bridge program. So today we are going to work on more during reading strategies that we use while we are reading, and also how to make connections with what we're reading. The article in your student manual will be 5 reasons why being kind makes you feel good, according to science. A quick review. Yesterday, we learned the difference between the main idea and the topic. Remember that the topic is the one word or 2 words about the whole text, and the main idea is the main point. And it can have several names, either the main idea, the purpose, the focus, the central idea, the gist, or focus. And remember that the main idea sentence can be stated, point blank, or even implied. Further, the main idea doesn't have to be at the beginning. It can be anywhere in the paragraph or article, or it might not be in a sentence at all if it's implied. And then we have the supporting details, which are the other facts, examples, or details that support and help describe the main idea. We are going to add on to this list. So far, we've had during reading strategies. We've had our pre-reading strategies, and we've had our during reading strategies. And we've learned to focus our full attention, to monitor our comprehension, to improve our comprehension through close reading and annotating text, which is something you're doing every single time you're reading an article. Creating an extensive vocabulary. How do we do that? By using context clues and through the use of the acronym IDEAS, and then using that vocabulary in your everyday conversations or when you write. And like I said, today we're going to keep adding to that list. So here's our goals for today. To focus on that understanding of what we're reading, so to increase our comprehension. We're going to talk how to adjust our rate of reading, react emotionally, create visual and sensory images, integrate new learning with old learning, and make connections. So the first one is adjust your rate of reading. You don't read everything at the same speed. So you change your pace of reading based upon your purpose and type of reading material. If it's something very easy, or if you're just picking up a book, or let's think about a magazine, right? And you're just reading it for entertainment, you just kind of go pretty fast. But if it's difficult material, a subject, a textbook for one of your college classes, you're going to go at a slower pace because it takes more time to do that deep or close reading to absorb the information the first time, without rereading. Now, you may go back and do that second reading. That's actually smart to do. But the first time you go through it, you don't go fast. You move at a slower pace. And it does depend on what you're reading and how familiar you are with that topic. Think of it this way. Normal reading, should be at the same speed as when you're talking to someone, just having a regular conversation, kind of like I am now. So it's not too fast, but it's not too slow either. It's just normal. So think about how you talk to your friends or your family. That's normal, regular talking. Well, that's normal reading. So regular talking is the speed you use most of the time. However, always slow down to understand something that's new or difficult, or if you need to memorize information, dates and facts, that sort of thing. And 2, you slow down as you're taking notes. but speed up if you're just scanning for information. Like I said, in a magazine article, a cookbook recipe, something like that. The second thing that you want to do is to react emotionally. When you are reading material, you really need to pull up the emotions that are in you. Put yourself in the character's shoes if it's a story, or even if it's a scientist, or in the author's shoes. Empathize with the characters. How would that make you feel if that happened to you? So if you can pull up emotions, it's going to help you. That is a reading strategy that actually helps you comprehend, gets the ideas of the content. So depending on the text, you might have anger, sadness, joy, scared, confusion, whatever it is, but pull up those emotions. Now, I know you probably text a lot, right? And use a lot of emojis. I do. So you can even think of it like that. There's so many emojis that will give these feelings. And here's some examples of them. Even embarrassed or hurt, surprised, worried, being silly. And if you want to, when you take your notes, you can write the word, how it makes you feel, or you can even draw a little emoji. That's fine too. So when you tune into your emotions as you're reading a text or putting yourself in that character's shoes, make sure that you are writing those emotions on the side, of the paper. This is my fave, creating visual and sensory images. When I share this one with students, they love this. It's creating pictures in your head. In other words, a movie that's taking place. When you start reading, the movie begins. So if you're putting images in your head, you are creating that movie. And it's one of the most helpful strategies that I know of. When you're creating that movie in your head, those images, you will remember it way better than not doing it. In fact, you can remember it up to 70% better than not creating any images in your head. So turn what's on paper into pictures and make a little movie out of it. And also put yourself in the story using your senses. Try to imagine that smell of the flowers that it mentions, or tasting that food, or hearing that bird chirping up in the tree, right? So that when you put your senses into it, along with the images, your comprehension is going to soar. So just, if you've not tried this strategy before, try it now and try it from here on. And I believe it's one of the most helpful tools in the toolbox. Another useful strategy is to integrate new learning with the old learning. In other words, it's a hook. You're hooking the new learning. Remember back in elementary school in math, you first learned how to add, right? Then when you were introduced to multiplication, you learned that multiplying was like addition. It was just repeated addition in groups, and it was faster. So you hooked learning multiplication with what you already knew about addition. It's the same thing when you're reading any text. See what you can hook it onto what you already know, starting at a foundation or scaffolding upon which you can place new facts, ideas, and concepts. You already have that base knowledge. That's where you start. So as you learn something new, you're adding on. Okay, you're adding that new information. So think about what you are reading and just consider how it fits with what you already know. That's your background knowledge, that we use that term so much, background knowledge. So that just means what you already know. So any way that you can hook that new learning with what you already know gives that new learning a foundation to be placed upon. Okay, we're going to talk about making connections. When you read, you can make connections in 3 ways. Text to self, text to world, and text to text. And when I say the word text, it's not texting on your phone, but the text is any material that you are reading. It can be the article, the science textbook, the literature, the novel, whatever it is. So as you read that text, you're going to connect it to you, the world, or to another text. And we'll talk about each of those in detail. This Making Connections chart is found on page 12 in your book. So make sure you turn there now, and then you can add notes to this. So we've got text to self. What does that mean? It is a connection between the material you're reading and something in your own life experience. That's like that background knowledge, but something that's happened to you personally. So when you're reading it, and that helps with pulling up emotions too. What does this remind you of that's happened in your life? Or somebody that's very close to you in your family or a good friend? Can you relate with whatever's going on to yourself? That's a powerful one, the text to self. Another way you can make connections is text to text. So whatever it is you're reading right now, and then a different text that you've already read. Now this can be another book, it can be a poem, it can be a song even, it can even be a video, okay? It normally refers to another written work, but it can also refer to like a movie or a video as well. So what does this remind you of something else that you've read? Or I'm going to throw in there seen, okay? And the third way to make a connection is text to the world, the broader world out there, the big wide world. So it's a connection between what you're reading now and something occurring in the world. And it can be in history that you remember, or it can be the present, or it could be something that's happened at any time. So what does this that you're reading remind you of in the real world? Now anytime you see or you can remember a connection taking place as you're reading, make sure to jot that down in your notes. That way you can go back and refer to that. Let's take the character of Harry Potter. So this is text to self. So Harry Potter was a character and he had all these different traits about him, okay? And you might, in the reading itself, it might list these traits, or you may just say, oh, he's brave, or he's loyal, or he's intelligent. But he's got these traits, and if you were to pick one trait, can you relate to that, to yourself? It doesn't. So when can you have displayed one of these qualities, in your life at school or at home or sometime when you were with your friends? Did you act like any of his traits? And also, it doesn't have to be a character trait. It can be an event that has happened to you or someone that you know about. But that's making it personal. Text to world. So something that is happening in the text that you're reading. Okay? Can you connect to anything you know about in the real world that has happened that's similar? For example, If the book you're reading mentions a war, you could maybe relate that the war that's going on there is kind of like the war in Israel going on right now. This also means any bigger societal issues, events, or the concerns going on. You know, what you see on the nightly news. Take, for instance, if you're reading about something in your material about the past banning of books, you could relate that maybe to the most recent banning of the Dr. Seuss books and whatever you think about that. Or how or even if that makes sense to you, or if you think that is wrong or right. And lastly, we have text to text. Remember, I said that text to text means anything that is written, but also it can be movies and shows as well. So you are connecting to another text that you are familiar with. So the material you're reading in this book, does that remind you when you read something online, or you saw it on Facebook or TikTok, or in that movie, or in the book you read in high school? Okay. So you're just trying to make that connection. And when you see that happening, again, make a note of it. We are going to watch Making Connections in Action. So in this short video that you're going to watch, it's going to review those 3 connections that we just talked about and show you how someone reads a simple story and then makes those 3 different connections within that story. And they even put it in a visual chart, which is something you could do as well, or just make notes of beside your reading material.
Welcome, eSparkers. Today we will be learning how to make text connections as a strategy of reading. You may be asking yourself, what are text connections? Well, I'm glad you did. There are 3 types of text connections: text to self, text to text, and text to world. Let's take a closer look at each of these connections. When you make a text to self connection, you draw on your own personal experiences. I may connect to a text in a different way than you do because you have different experiences and background knowledge. When we make text-to-text connections, we connect the text we are currently reading to a previously read text. The word text refers to anything written, so it could be stories, poems, or songs. When you make a text-to-world connection, you draw on experiences outside of your own. They are no longer personal. Text-to-world connections address bigger issues, events, or concerns in society. Okay, let's take a closer look at text connections with an example. I've been reading the book When Jessie Came Across the Sea by Amy Hess. I'll give you a brief summary of what I've already read. The story is about Jessie, a young Jewish girl from Eastern Europe. She is chosen by her local rabbi to emigrate to America. She must leave her grandmother behind. That's where we'll pick up the story. A week passed quickly, then 2 more, as grandmother prepared Jessie for her journey. The morning the ship was to sail, it rained so hard there was no telling where the sea. America, good things await you there, grandmother promised. Jessie stood at the rail, holding her hat against the wind and the rain. At her feet was a small trunk, packed with a few simple clothes and layers of lace. In Jessie's pocket was the tiny silver box with a tiny lace lining, but her mother's wedding band was not inside. "Keep it safe for me, grandmother," she had whispered as they kissed goodbye. "Grandmother," she called, but the boat slipped away from the dock, then into the channel and on toward the sea. Umbrellas faded in the mist. Rain pelted Jessie's face. It slid down the back of her collar. I just made a text-to-self connection. Let's fill out this table to track my connections. The quote from the text that I connected to is, "Grandmother," she called, but the boat slipped away from the dock, then into the channel, on toward the sea. This reminds me of the first time I left home to go to sleepaway camp for 1 whole month. While I wasn't going on a journey across the world, and I wasn't leaving my family forever, I do remember feeling very scared and nervous for what was awaiting me at camp. I can imagine that Jessie must be feeling those same emotions on a much larger scale. Okay, let's keep reading. Later, she sat on her trunk and cried. Passengers pitied the girl with the auburn hair and ginger-colored freckles. But what could they do? Crammed together and fearful, speaking strange languages, huddling close to keep warm, what could they do for Jessie? The ship sailed west for many days. At first it was stormy. Jessie laid curled on a mat, too ill to eat, too ill to sleep. She thought about grandmother in that hut with the slanting roof, eating her soup alone. I just made another connection. This time it was a text-to-text connection. As I read this quote, Jessie lay curled on a mat, too ill to eat, too ill to sleep. She thought about grandmother in the hut with the slanting roof, eating her soup alone. I was reminded of the book Dreaming of America, an Ellis Island story by Eve Bunting. This story is also about a young girl that emigrates to America. She's going to America to meet her parents who are already there. When I think about these two stories together, I see a common theme between the two. People go to America or new places for a better life. Okay, let's keep reading. I've skipped a few pages that describe Jessie's journey so that we can read about her arrival at Ellis Island. On a fine fall day, they sailed past the Statue of Liberty. America! No one swapped stories or argued. Babies hushed. Even the oldest passengers and the most seasick stood against the rail. America! And there it was, New York City, with those tall, tall buildings that touched the sky. Grandmother, Jessie thought, if only you could see what I see now. The ship docked at Ellis Island. Then papers, wait online. Inspections, wait online. Papers, wait online. Questions. What is your name? Jessie. What is your age? 13. Are you married? No. What is your occupation? I sew lace. Can you read and write? Yes. Are you ill? No. Jessie, a woman with bright hair burst through the crowd. You may call me Cousin Kay. She had a soft, sweet voice and gave Jessie a hug. Where is Lou? Jessie wondered as Cousin Kay talked on. I forgot to say goodbye. I just made another connection, a text-to-world connection. As I read, the ship docked at Ellis Island, then papers, wait online, inspections, wait online, papers, wait online, questions. I thought about the many challenges the immigrants faced and the fear they must have felt at possibly being turned away and sent back to their own countries. This got me thinking about all of the recent immigration news in the United States. While people emigrated to Ellis Island many years ago, I imagine that some of the same challenges and fears are still present today for those wishing to emigrate to America. So let's take a look at all of the connections we made and how they help us to better understand a text. Remember, we talked about how text-to-self connections provide us with a better understanding of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of characters. Text-to-text connections help me to understand the overall theme of a story and the author's purpose for writing the text. And text-to-world connections help me to better relate to events that are occurring in the story. So, while you're reading, remember to keep an eye out for text connections.
Okay, your turn to practice. You're probably getting tired of me saying this, but I want to drill it into your head that always do your pre-reading strategies first before you read, and then talk to the text as you read along. Make sure you make those annotations. And as you're reading today, focus on, everything we've talked about, author's techniques and all those during reading strategies, but especially focus today to see if you can make some connections to the text. In fact, I would love it if you could write all 3 types of connections in your annotations. Now find your article, 5 Reasons Why Being Kind Makes You Feel Good According to Science. So go back to your student manual book on pages 41. It goes through pages 45. Plus you have your vocabulary chart that you want to fill out on page 16 as you are practicing building up your vocabulary. So pause this video now while you practice all of your strategies with the reading material. Don't forget those text connections. Give yourself about 20 minutes to complete the reading, annotations, and the questions at the end in your vocabulary chart. When finished, come back here and push play to finish today's lesson. All right, let's look at the discussion questions. Number 1, what is the benefit of being kind? This is a basic question to see if you can recall this information. The answer is A, improved mood. Number 2, paragraph 1 contributes to the author's description about kindness in what way? And by the way, I don't know if I have mentioned your paragraphs, you can always number on the side, number your paragraphs when you're reading, so it's helpful to you to go back to a certain paragraph. Okay, the answer to number 2 is D. It demonstrates differing opinions about why people are kind. Number 3, what is the main purpose of the text? If you recall, main purpose, main idea, that's the big idea. The answer is B, to explain the varying reasons of why being kind makes us happy. Number 4, according to the text, when others are feeling negative, we want to do a kind act to make both them and ourselves feel better. Number 5, how are social connections affected by being kind? When you read these, they're all correct, so the correct answer is D, all of the above. Number 6, according to the authors, people will express emotions that they see expressed by others. That is true. A. Number 7, an act of kindness can develop a more purposeful feeling when B. the act of kindness is linked to something that is important to us. Number 8, the two-way relationship by being kind to others refers to A, the happiness that occurs and the motivation to continue more acts of kindness. Number 9, you can deduce from the reading that the authors may suggest that a police officer would volunteer to do which of the following? B, teach personal safety skills to a high-crime community. In the reflection discussion, it says, in this text, the authors discuss the relationship between acts of kindness and happiness. In what specific areas of this reading can you make connections? Include at least 3 connections. That's to yourself, to another text, or to the world. So you're supposed to do all 3 of those as you were reading. And if you didn't do that, please go back and make sure that you do complete that today. In the vocabulary chart on page 16, I believe you had 3 words there. So check your context clues, and of course look them up to check for yourself if you got that correct. In summary, we learned more strategies, more tools to do while we are reading. Why? To increase our comprehension, to better understand it. So one thing is to adjust your rate of reading according to the material that you are reading. React emotionally. If you can pull your heart and soul into the material you're reading, you're going to remember it better. It just makes it, again, more of a connection to yourself. Create the visual and sensory images. That's where you put the movie in your mind, right? That is so helpful. With the beginning of the reading, start that movie and go all the way to the end. And of course, add those sensory images. Can you smell that smell? Can you see it? Can you hear it? And then hook the new learning with your old learning and make those connections. Text to self, text to text, and text to world. So for today's assignment, Day 6, go back and review making connections. Why do I want you to go back and review? Because the more you review it, the more you're going to remember it. Okay? And reread today's article to correct any of those reading comprehension questions you may have missed. And please go back, like I said, to add to the reflection section on making those text connections, those 3 text connections. A lot of people ask me, if I were shipwrecked and could only have one book, what would it be? I always say, How to Build a Boat. Make a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.